Okay, you're going to start with a tissue box either like this or one like this, whichever size meets your needs. Okay, you're going to very carefully open up the box by opening the flaps. You're going to remove the tissues, and you'll notice that they come out like a hump, right? Especially if you have the square box, they're going to be in a hump shape. So you want to save those like that off to the side so that you can use them later. You're going to keep opening up the box carefully until it completely unfolds flat. Next, you're going to get out your ruler and you're going to measure each panel of the box. So you only need to measure the width and the height of each panel. So when you're measuring, you're going to measure right up to the edge, and then you're going to take a Sharpie or a marker and note how long that space is. So this is 5 inches. 5 inches this way. And then for each flap, I would do the same thing. So this is 1.75 this way. The width of this flap stays the same. It's 5 inches, which is the same as this panel. So sometimes the measuring gets repetitive. On the flaps, you want to measure the base. So this is 4 inches. And then you want to give it the overall height. So even if it's slanted, we'll just take the measurement right from the center, which is 3 inches. Okay, so keep writing until you have them all down. Okay, so when we're working in Illustrator, you want to open up an artboard. You may need to make it larger. If you need to do that, you can just check the artboard tool right here. You can expand your artboard as needed. The first stop we're going to do is we're going to head over to our rectangle tool and click on it. And then we're just going to click once anywhere on the artboard. We should get this pop-up window. Now we're going to go back to looking at our box and writing down those first measurements. So the first panel that I measured was 4.125 by 5 inches. So I'm going to put in the height is 5 inches and the width is 4.125. And it should be inches. If your setting is showing up as pixels, you might want to come up here into Illustrator and then Preferences and change your units. I'll show you how to do that in a second. When I click OK, it's going to make a rectangle that's the exact size as the measurements that I entered. So there it is. And if you did want to change your units, you can come up here to Illustrator, Preferences, and then choose Units. And you can change your general to inches. So if you happen to be working in points, and it's not working for you, you just drop it down to inches and say OK. All right, so that's this first panel of my box. And I'm going to move it up to the top. Now my next panel is going to be, the width is going to stay the same. It's 4.125. And my height is now not 5 inches, but 4.0625. And OK. And then that one goes here. Now I know the next panel is going to be the same size as the one opposite it, right? Because they're parallel. So I'm going to be able to copy this and paste it. And then I've got the 4 major sides of my box. And now I just need to complete this last side. Now, if you notice how these are manufactured, the side flap is actually made out of 2 pieces that overlap. This is very hard for designers to make the artwork line up over that seam. So to make your life a little easier, let's make this top flap come all the way down to cover to the bottom here. So that way it will look seamless the way the other 2 sides look without any seam going through it. So we're going to kind of extend this top flap to make it cover down to the bottom. So go back to our measurements and go back to our layout. Remember what we're looking at here, we're building directly on the screen. So we'll come back into our side flaps, and those are about 1.5 inches wide, and they're going to be the same height as the box next to it, So the height is going to be 5 inches and the width is going to be 1.5 inches. And that's going to be the flap on this side. And then the same one on the opposite side. Then we go down to look at our next flap, and the next flap is the one that will be that side panel. So we want that side panel to be the same size as this one next to it. And that one's already here. It's the one that's 5 inches tall and 4.125 wide. So we can make that again, 5 inches tall by 4.125 wide. And that one, we're gonna rotate. You can hit the letter R, or you can just use the black arrow. And that one is gonna go right in there. Looks like I gotta squish it in a little bit. And then copy and paste. And it will come down there as well. Now, if we try to kind of wrap our heads around this, we can start to kind of see how it's coming out. This is where the hole would be on the top, right? This would be a side panel, this would be a side panel, this would be a side, and this would be a side, and then this would be the bottom. So keep working your way through this until the design is complete and you've transferred all your measurements from your box onto your Illustrator file. Now, because these bottom two, this will connect on top of it, it doesn't need to be a full size. We can kind of cut it down a little bit. And we can take our white arrow, and on all of these things that are just going to be flaps, we can go ahead and kind of push them in a little bit. This will just make it easier for you to cut. So now I'm going to label each section so that I know what it is when I fold it up. And I'm also going to label this with the text facing the way it should when looking at it. So because your graphics will wrap around a 3D object, you're going to have to change the direction of the graphics as you move around the box. Now, because this is actual size and it's much larger than what we can print on an 8.5 by 11 letter size paper, I'm going to keep my media size letter, but I'm going to change my scaling to custom so I could make it kind of shrink it down. This is actually 50% size of the original. And then that way I can make sure it all fits on the page. Okay, once you've printed this, you now want to cut it out, and then we're going to test it to fold it up and see if it works. Once you have your small version printed out, you're now going to fold it up and see if it works. Okay, make sure you didn't miss any folds. And now you're going to figure out how your box folds up. So all your flaps should have double stick tape on them. You may need to pick up a roll from Staples. All right, it's tape that's sticky on both sides. And that's how you're gonna seal up your box when the time comes. But right now we're just testing to see that it even works. So all of our flaps have tape. And now let's see how we can close up this box. So our first closure will be here with the bottom edge to the side, and then we want to adhere it together. So now we've got that happening. Looking good so far. On this side, we're going to tuck in this piece. We're going to fold that flap down on top of it. Try to get it to stick. And then we'll put this one on top of that one. Let it stick. Now, we'll bring this flap. This is the flap I told you about where the seam would normally be there, because in the example box, this is the bottom and then this would be the top halfway. But we don't want to have that seam there. So this flap was extended and it's going to come and cover all the way down to the bottom. Now, when you build this out of the cardboard, it will be a lot easier to put together because it won't be so flimsy like this paper. And now on this side, this is our last piece. Put this one in first. This one on top, then this one, and then lastly this side one. So this is what we're trying to get, which is a small version of my box. So it's a mini version, but it does fold up and all my measurements were accurate. So now I'm ready to move on to the design portion and my mechanical is complete. Good luck.